Can't trust an occultist who isn't seeking visions or chasing ghosts away, who isn't seeing a counselor for the visions that sting and the ghosts who cling.
This podcast is based around the history and experiences of the infamous Shane Bugbee, recollected and retold by Shane Bugbee himself. Who is Shane? Well, you're about to find out. I'm your host, Nannerl, and this is Speak of the Devil.
The lion. It's a symbol of courage, strength, power, justice, might. Even Anton LaVey raised the lion from cub to king. In this episode of Speak of the Devil, Shane Bugbee resumes his recollections of his friendship with Doug, known now as Lucian Greaves of the Satanic Temple, and how he was a mentor to Doug and part of the architecture and founding of the Satanic Temple, aka TST. So Shane, as we learn more about Doug here, I guess the ultimate question is going to be, did Doug become the king of the jungle with TST, or is he just a big pussy?
Oh, I don't know if he's either. I don't know how to answer that one. Is he just a big pussy? I think in the context of me, and him, yeah, I think he's I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for 10 years, 12 years. So the word pussy is a sign of strength. And so I don't use that word as a sign of weakness. But I would say he's been weak in his approach to dealing with me, how he ignores me and doesn't debate me, won't openly debate me publicly, has blocked me from Twitter. Those things are weak to me. And I am a very compassionate person to weak people and naturally weak people, but that is a weird one. That is weird for, like, why not take it? Or it shows how threatening I am to him, and I really appreciate that, but I don't understand why he wouldn't debate me or go at me publicly all on his own. And I think when he was taken off of the Twitter, when Twitter took him down, it was righteous because he was actually telling people he did a call to action. And when you're a leader of a group and you tell people, hey, let's harass this person online, you should be taken offline because you're a bully. He showed his character there, which was a little scary to me, but he chooses not to bully me or, give me a forum, I guess. I would say he's weak in the respect between me and him. I would like to say that some of his stuff has been strong with the Satanic Temple. I would like to say some of the actions they've done have been strong, but I don't see it that way because I see religion as being like a dead thing. So I think it's just like marketing. It's just hype. I don't see a lot of it as strong. I see it as exploitive, opportunistic, all of those things, but I don't see it as strong.
I really see some of it being a bit of a duality. It came to attention to me last summer when they unveiled the Baphomet statue in Arkansas, and the idea of standing up for the little guy, the idea of standing up for religions that are not Christian in a very Christian state, really stood up as noble. But it seemed like the closer I peered to what was going on their Twitter or what would be mentioned on Reddit, it seemed very much like it was a front, and a lot of it just a front for people who wanted a title but didn't didn't actually go through the actions they were very excited about from the get-go, because it seemed like there were far more followers who were doing nothing rather than people calling to action and coming to action.
Well, that may be. I don't pay attention to their membership so much. They're not really something to pay attention to because, I guess, the lack of accomplishments.
I see.
But with Doug, I believe that Doug, Doogie is definitely into what he's into the fight against religious persecution, like, let's say, religion picking on the small guy, let's say. He was like a person who would fight for the smaller person, I think he might have been. I'm not really sure anymore. Maybe his character shined through. But with me, that's the role he played for a good long time, was like defender of the anti-faith. And it seems like it became a corporate thing. And I don't believe the funders, the people who are funding this, Kevin and that stuff, are the same, into the same politics. So Doug tries to get his shots in where he can, but he's being, it's being funded by people who are not into that.
Do you think that were his intentions the same intentions when you met him and when you guys started talking about the idea of a satanic lobbyist group?
Well, when we started talking about a satanic lobbyist group, that was in the early stages. That was a long time ago. When we started talking about the formation of the Satanic Temple proper, that was an idea that was worked out. Like, okay, boy, that whole history is wild, because there was the S word that I put out, and so that's where it started. Like, that's where Doug was like, "Hey, I'm going to get revenge on the Church of Satan. I'm going to go after these people. There's going to be hell to pay for this. We'll start our own group." And that's where this all started. Then he found Kevin, and I think he was looking to get it funded. I'm not sure what happened there. But remember, everything we say here, the more we talk about them, the more we give to Kevin. He wants this. This helps him. And I just want to make that real clear. They're getting off on us talking about this. I can't imagine that they won't. But if they get upset by this, I'll be very happy. But it seems to feed their twisted agenda. That's weird. But I just had to say that.
Bitches be crazy.
Bitches be crazy.
Before Kevin, like, how many years between you and Doug's just planning to having investors was there?
Oh, it might have been a whole decade. I don't know. At least a good 5-6 years.
Okay.
When he went to Harvard, I guess I would say. So he was probably at Harvard for 4 years before. So 4 to 6 years.
I would imagine too, going to Harvard, you meet, just like any college experience, you meet different people. You meet people who are possibly from the other side of the tracks than you and like-minded. And from what I'm collecting from your story is that he found someone who was possibly interested in the same thing, maybe not as passionate, but definitely had the scratch to make his dreams a reality.
Oh, yeah, that was certainly something. I remember when Doug ran into these people, he would call me and tell me, there's people with real money here, like real money. Like old money, like deep pockets, so that means there's opportunity. There's opportunities to get films made. There's opportunities to get your art made. There's opportunities to get your message out there when there's people with deep pockets.
Do you think that in this situation, Doug was an artist who possibly found patrons?
I think part of that, I don't know if he's more of a corporate person, so I don't know if artists are corporate. So
more like a startup guy.
Yeah, I think Doug has a creative side to him. He has an artist. There's a percentage of him that can do artwork, but I think there's, just like the term Satanist, there's levels or there's layers to that, and it's hard to define, and it's also hard to define an artist. But I'm not sure an artist is easily controllable, and so I think some people who are artists would be better served if they were politicians, because they're actually in the art game because they're political. And I think Doug's one of those kind of creatures. Like, he's a talented human being, but he's more of a politician than an artist, if that makes sense. And so his politics are being fed, or he's able to implement some of his political stance into the world based on funding. But it doesn't have much to do with art. Most of the art that they use in the TSC came from me, the creative elements, even the weird logos that they were using. I had to suggest that they use a actual satanic logo versus a cow, for, let's say.
I almost see him akin to the tech bros, the Mark Zuckerbergs, sort of a small potatoes version of these entrepreneurs of tech in the Silicon Valley. They find an angel investor and people to fund their ideas, and a lot of times when they meet that success, they become very different people.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I can't see you, so I don't mean to cut you off. Please.
No. That's all I wanted to say. I'm going to scratch that part because I don't like where I was going with that.
Oh, no, please leave it, because I want to answer to that.
Please do. Okay, answer. That was my question.
The tech thing, that might be something, but I see tech bros as more just for money or to climb a mountain just to say I climbed the mountain. And I see, when I talk about Doug, it's more, I see him as a political person, more like a Hitler or any creative person who's had their heart broken. And I'm not saying he's a Nazi necessarily. I'm just saying, like, Hitler was an artist who was more politically inclined, and that's how I see it. I see him more. He's looking to have power or to implement control or laws or a way of life. He's looking at social engineering. And I wonder if maybe the tech bros do look to socially engineer, don't they? In a different way. They speak a different language, don't they?
They sort of play God after years of getting a wedgie or getting rejected by girls. They go for that money, go for that success, because with money comes friends and anything you want.
Yeah, they do. They are political, aren't they? But they're political in a weird, witchy way, aren't they? They're wild. That's a wild group. They speak a whole different language. They're not so typical as politicians, but they certainly are political. And I think Doug is more of a typical politician that is a creative person versus a creative person. I don't know. That's how I see that.
Do you think that he ever imagined TST to explode the way it did, or do you think that was his plan all along?
Oh, well, I think you have to imagine that something's going to be big like that in order, the imagination goes that way. And, I could imagine it that. I mean, when we talked about it early on, you talk about that. What if things become successful or whatever, but you don't get delusional about it. You sort of, I think part of magic or part of that stuff is to have a dream, see it clearly, and then hide it, put it way out of your sight, and then start to do deep focus and focus hard on what's in front of you to get to that end goal. And then you run into your end goal, and all of a sudden one day you open your eyes and like, holy shit, I imagined this one day. I imagined it would be like this. That's magic.
I'm sure the aid of an investor in his case helped. And I know that investors and other people who come from, how he would put it, serious money or real money or anything like that, they often they think through what they are investing in, and they have to see promise in something if they wish to invest, because I'm sure other people hit them up for that.
You're taking the art out of it now. I don't think that's true. I think you can throw money at things all day long. You can look at satellite radio, and satellite radio had billions of dollars thrown at it, and RSS feed and podcasting killed it overnight. And that was creative thinking. So I think you could throw money at something, but without the creative elements, the marketing, the magic, you're just going to lose money. And some people have a lot of money to lose, and it doesn't matter to them. But in this case, The money didn't help up front. It was what I did and what Doug did. The idea that we had for years and how it came together in the right time at the right moment, and how we worked together at, manifesting this, like talking about the elements and how we could manipulate people into paying attention to it. And not people like that are the flock that he has today, but more the media. How can we get the media to grab this? How can we get this to grab in the media? And once you have a popularity or a fame, your illusions could be weaker. You can do almost anything once you have fame or attention like that. You can create a lesser illusion, and it'll look just as big as the original one. And so that's sort of how that happened. We created a huge illusion up front. And then with each action, as you can see, it becomes less and less and less. And now you have a Jex Blackmore, which is the lesser of all of it. It's just like a horrible illusion she's doing.
It's interesting you say something becomes lesser and lesser, as one of their recommended reading is Paradise Lost. And in Paradise Lost, the image of Satan, the appearance of Satan as this magnificent figure slowly dwindles down to a serpent at the end.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's what happens with illusion building. I think a lot of times it's something like that.
You yourself are a magician, and your magic includes your prowess in marketing, and you have a lot of experience in this, even prior to TST.
Oh yeah.
And so it can't be unsaid that credit's due where credit's due. And do you definitely think that they got where they are due to your hard work, due to your image, your marketing that you influenced Doug with, if not dead right given to him?
I would share it with Doug, but I would say absolutely. Doug was stuck on the theories, more of he was stuck on the foundational stuff of a business, where I was like, you're missing things. You're calling people minions. No one in that world, no one in the actual satanic world is going to listen to someone that's calling them a minion. No one's going to follow someone with a cow skull. You're mocking this. And those two examples alone sound simple, but they're big deals. The colors, the psychology of colors. When I say this, like, oh, the colors were wrong. Someone's going to say, well, that's not a big deal. But actually, it's one of the biggest deals. McDonald's operates based on their colors, not the flavor of their burger. Soda pop works based on the color, not the flavor. This is true. Check the psychology check out Edward Bernays, for instance, and what he's written about marketing. And then check out the psychology of colors within the context of marketing.
Mickey Mouse has the same colors as McDonald's.
Right. There's a reason for these things, and they work. And if you look at the psychology of colors in the context of marketing, you'll see what I'm talking about. And these are essential to magic. The devil's in the details. And so I would say that I definitely played a large role in it. I know that, they weren't successful in the attempt they made before I came along. They failed at everything they were doing until I started to actually help with what they were doing. And the statue idea was an idea that me and Doug came up with as well. And that was originally supposed to be in Florida. I got to say something, though. The Lucy and Grieve stuff I said last show.
Yes.
I started to talk about that, and I wanted to make sure I finished it.
Oh, definitely.
And so when Doug came to me and said, we need someone to play Lucy and Greaves in the film, because this was just going to be a film. This was not going to be a religion. It was just a mockumentary and going to be a documentary, a mockumentary. And he needed someone to fill the shoes of Lucy and Greaves. And he spoke to me about it, and Kevin was talking to actors at the same time. And Doug's like, I hate these actors because they can't follow through with the philosophy. They don't understand what's being said. You do. Would you do this? And I told him how much money I wanted to do it, because they're paying an actor. Kevin's rich, so I want some of his money. So I said, I want this kind of money. And it was a big sum, but I also needed creative. I needed to see the final edit. I needed to be able to sign off on a final edit. And that's something not a lot of people will give you permission to do when they're doing a film. And they wouldn't do that for me, so I wouldn't do this for them. And an association with me, for them, back in that time was really important for Doug. So Doug forced the issue by using some of my footage in one of his films, one of his short propaganda pieces, and saying that we work together. Because to have an association with Anton LaVey, even if it's through me, was a big. It caused it created legitimacy for Doug, and here we are now. so much. Here we are. He's a legitimate figure in this world based on that. So, yeah, my hard work had a lot to do with it. I would also say, like, there was another person that got involved to gain some legitimacy, and that was just Szandora LaVey. They had her speak at Harvard, and they had her speak there just because she was using the LaVey last name. And so those little things work in marketing. Now, in present day, people are going to go, that most people know them through the Baphomet statue, not the Baphomet, the Manophe or whatever. No boobies, no Baphomet.
No cake, no boobies.
Yeah, no Baphomet. So the statue that they created, most people know them through that hype. They don't understand. Some of these people don't even know who Anton LaVey is. But in the beginning stages, in order to even be listened to by media people, which is who you're trying to be listened to, they're educated folks. They understand the history. They're older, let's say. But they when they look into it, they're like, Satanism? What's this? And they look into it and see that Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible. Wow, this person's associated with this person, hung out and ate double stuffed Oreos with him. This girl was married to his grandson. Wow, they must be legitimate. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that legitimacy is sold to a top tier person, and it trickles down to the Juggalo nation. And I love Juggalos, yo. Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop.
Don't get me wrong, but I love them because I've been at that level. So I get it. And so that's how this works. That's how this works. And as long as we have the colors the right way and the right logo and the right wording, we're able to pull you in. We're giving you exactly what you were looking for, which is rebellion, which is what Marilyn Manson fed you 20 years ago, your parents. What Marilyn Manson fed your parents and what your parents fed you. So I was asked to be Lucy and Greaves originally, and did not take that on. They have a horrible actor that played the part, and then Doug had to step in because the actor could not answer the questions properly. So Doug reluctantly stepped in as Lucy and Greaves.
So the actor is the one in the Hail Rick Scott demonstration of Florida, correct?
Yes.
And just in hindsight, and for those of you who are unsure what I'm talking about, this was a demonstration done after Governor Rick Scott had stated about religious freedom, but he was more so talking about conservative Christianity, and Satanic Temple decided to interpret it and demonstrate it as, oh sweet, we can finally come out and publicly display our religious expression. Satanist forever, hail Rick Scott.
Right, now that idea to attack Rick Scott was purely Doug's. Doug saw that shot. He's like, boom, here's where I have a shot. I can take a right hook. The statue idea was before that. Me as a sculptor, I wanted it. I was going to do the original sculpture, and that was supposed to be in Florida. And my friend Edwin Kagan, the lawyer for the American Atheist, he's passed away now. R.I.P. Mr. Kagan.
R.I.P. Mr. Kagan.
Yeah, he was such a great guy. I would stay at his house. Just a wonderful person. He asked us not to do that because it would interfere with one of his cases in Florida, and he didn't want to be tied into Satanists. So we didn't. We put that idea off, and then Doug saw this Rick Scott thing, and he took the shot. So that was purely Doug's idea, the Rick Scott thing. The sculpture was my idea, and it was before the Rick Scott thing. but we put it off.
I see. So the gentleman who's the little thin gentleman with the funny horns and the facial hair, who is initially on the podium, he was just playing an actor.
He was an actor, and he is playing an actor. Yeah, he wasn't really much of an actor. But that guy was Kevin's idea. And that's how you see Kevin's intent to mock the Satanist. He's got this bald, weak, small man as a Satanist guy. You know, so his image is that. He's looking to make fun of us. And
do you think Doug was aware of this?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that because it meant the promise of funding from someone powerful that he kept silent about this?
Oh, I think Doug weaponized it and used it as a weapon to, used it to say this is what represents the COS, the Church of Satan, versus us. So he looked at the climb. He's a climber. He's navigating and climbing, and he looked at it as something he could step on. There's not much that's going to happen to these characters like this. They're not going to look at it and go, how do we climb on it? How do we turn this minus into a plus? But I think that's at least what Doug will do. And that's another sign of a decent Satanist, is someone who picks themselves up, brushes themselves off, and says, I have this loss here. Now, how do I take this and learn it? Use it as at least a lesson. Mm-hmm. But maybe how can I use this as a plus? How can I make something of this minus? Because we can't stand for the minus in our life, the deficit. We have to have a plus.
Do you think that his reluctancy was all a plan? Like becoming the second, basically, Lucien Greaves the second?
I wonder about his integrity or legitimacy often as I see how this grows. But I also think, boy, maybe this has always been his thing, a violent overthrow of the government. Maybe that's always what he's gone for. He's always looked to have power by any means necessary.
It sort of reminds me of Stalin.
Yeah, something like that, right? And he's using political theatrics and stunts to get a leg up. I mean, they didn't do the TST did not do their postcard writing campaign to the White House to harass the White House. That was basically like, hey, pay attention to us. We can be we're a powerful political group that could work for you or against you. Your choice.
So
which is how Talibans and how biker gangs and how everyone works. We can work with you or we can work against you. Your choice. But we got a lot of people that live by you. We know where you live, and a lot of our crew lives over there. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? That's how this works on the underworld and the underground.
It's interesting you would call it an underworld or an underground, considering how young this organization is and considering how it does, on the surface, seem very meta. It seems like still something that is mostly on the internet.
Define meta to me.
What I mean by meta, I'm probably using it wrong, and I probably use the opposite. But what I meant was small potatoes.
Okay.
If you would like to give me some vocabulary lessons, since English is my second language, you can always email me at questions@speakofthedevilpodcast.com.
Well, I think like with new words and even old words, we all have different interpretations of them. That's why I asked you to define it, because I have different understandings of words that you can have different understandings of, and that's one of them. I see what you're saying. So do I see them? Yeah, I see that. See, you're talking about the word Satanism or Satan, and that still strikes fear in the hearts of people who wear Christianity on their sleeve. It's in God we trust is on our dollar bills. So it is something that's pushed to the fringes, even though without it, you wouldn't have the 0-1 dynamic that Christianity or gods Bible thumpers need. I mean, in God we trust is maybe a pretty abstract statement. Which God where? But this is a Christian nation, and so I do think it's at least a fringe thing, or it can be posed as an underworld thing, just like the Juggalos have become a gang. Who the FBI labeled them a gang.
Wow.
Yeah, or a terrorist, like that. Basically, when they say gang, they're saying terrorist group, but they leave the word terrorist for people of color that are outside of the country.
Yes.
And for the most part, I don't know if they call like Black Lives Matter a terrorist group, but I think they call them like organized crime here, stuff like that. I might be wrong with the technical words, and if you want to give me a lesson, you can email gofuckyourself at gofuckyourself.com.
So, flash forward just about, 15 years later, and now we have the baphomet, manphomet, titless statue that allegedly has not been paid for yet, that was demonstrated in Arkansas and now is a tourist attraction at a museum. A film that borrows footage from what you had a hand in, that is essentially a propaganda film, and an organization that collects donations without thanking their donors and has countless followers who often jumped into Satanism without really knowing its roots. Would you call this a cult?
It definitely, all of it becomes cult-like when you get involved in it. I have to say, even with the Church of Satan stuff, I started to have a cult mentality defending it till I was blue. Like, I really defended things, and I would get on because I was a reverend, and I would defend the philosophy to a point of sounding a little fanatical. But because of their cults seem to be religious, and I don't like to call them a religious group, they're a political activist group. Like when I came up with the concept, and I came up with this on an atheist podcast about 12 years ago, that the Church of Satan was an artistic and political group. No one had said that before I said that. I know Doug has said that within his group, and I don't see them as being artistic. I see them as being purely a political group.
It's interesting and you so say that now. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. I think with cults, they have some religion attached to them. And I think that's what they'd like to project. But they're just political, and that makes them like a terrorist group or some sort of group or they could be, given the right opportunity. Like I said before, when you start we believe this, we believe that, with such a philosophy of individuality, when you start saying, well, we're against the statue in public, we're going to fight for that, when does it grow into we're going to help build this wall and keep the Mexicans out? When does it grow into all these awful things that are, I'm politically opposed to? It's quite a sinister thought.
Well, when the precedent's set, once you have a group of people, like you can go and say, I have 50,000 people that believe that when I say something, it goes. That means you have 50,000 troops. How many troops are we threatening to send to Iran right now? 150,000 to dominate a country? That means if you have that much power in an organization, a political organization, you have some muscle and you could flex. You can flex and go, I'll send 150,000 people up your ass. Like, you're going to listen to what I have to say? And so when everyone's moving like that together, it can be scary. And especially when you have a satanic belief system or sketches of it, remnants of a satanic belief system. You can be pretty, dangerous looking and dangerous. Satanists are a dangerous brood. But that's a good thing we're all individuals and not grouped up.
Do you think LaVey would have accepted Doug into his circle?
Well,
I apologized for making you speak for him, but you know Doug quite well.
Yeah, I think Doug doesn't, at this point, I think not. And I don't see any accomplishments before that where he would have respected. I mean, having a show on Radio Free Satan is, you know, the accomplishment would have went to Rich and Honey. They created the station. So they would have gotten that award from LaVey. Like, thanks for creating the station. Come on over for cookies. You know? But Doug was just a DJ on there. So until Doug wrote a couple books or had some accomplishments, LaVey's not going to pay too much mind to him. Because LaVey was that character. He dealt with authors, scientists, inventors, you know, fucking great people who were doing great things.
Even his taste in music is quite different as well. He didn't really care for heavy metal. He didn't really, no, but he wouldn't have liked Skinny Puppy.
No, but he didn't have to like it. I mean, Marilyn Manson was in his house, and he because he was accomplished.
Yes, I was about to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. King Diamond would visit, and you know, and LaVey would go to King Diamond concerts to say hi, to be seen, and to show an endorsement for a satanic artist. So he was cool. Like, he was a cool satanic bohemian, was say LaVey, let's say. Maybe he was a bohemian. I know that that was referenced in a show about me. And, you know, LaVey was just a cool guy. So I don't think Doug had any accomplishments, even though when we went to, no, I took Doug with me on a lunch date to meet with Peter Gilmore. And he wasn't accepted in that circle then either. You know, he was there because I guested him. But Peter didn't accept him in either because there wasn't much accomplishment. And at this point, the accomplishment is like, I'm a hater. I hate you because you didn't accept me, maybe, or something like that.
A lot of this adds a lot of perspective, considering there's oftentimes a back and forth or sort of a sick'em attitude when it comes to any time COS says anything. Doug or TST draws attention to it and often writes up a rebuttal. Hearing these stories of how he wasn't quite accepted the way he expected to be by Peter Gilmore adds a lot of depth to this, and definitely shows that he had his own mission. He's out to prove to them that he's the satanist of all, when if he is a true Satanist, he definitely is not a celebration of the artist. He's definitely not a celebration of the self, because he's very overconscious about how people view him and how people accept him.
Yeah, that's a good point about, you know, like looking at how that's a good point. Being a crowd pleaser is not too satanic, is it? And well, Doug, but he used them and poked a stick at them. When they started, it was like, we're basically Anton LaVey's, well, basically the same thing. We're just, they're political, and they're not. And that was the shit they were selling when they first launched the Baphomet statue and got attention. And people were like, well, what's the difference between you and the COS? And they'd be like, well, we're politically active. And I always thought that was horseshit. I was like, if you wear a Baphomet shirt outside in your house, you're politically active. Like, that's a political act, and it's an individual act. It's the, you know, like, that's an individual thing where you're taking power. You know, you're wielding your power, or you're making a statement as an individual. So I think it's a really cool and a political act. To say that's not political is pretty bizarre, and to have people go, yeah, they're not political enough, is people that don't get it or don't want to get it.
It's very hard to view byproducts of TST as art, unfortunately, especially when a lot of it comes out and seems quite fungible or just completely interchangeable tributes, interchangeable wordings, and some of the wordings actually sound quite similar to things that you have said.
Yeah, well, he gets a lot of his stuff from me.
Takes after his father.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like the
Chip
phrase
off the old block. Son
Like,
of the devil.
There's an interview he did with me, and I sent you the text of it. I believe that for the book that I did when we got run out of Ely, when I was run out of Ely, Minnesota. And he did an interview with me, and he spoke about Might is Right. And I talked to there about, well, I see Might is Right differently than I did when I published it, and I feel it was an unfinished book. And I think there wasn't enough observation to the animal kingdom and the symbiotic relationship the eagle has with the fish it eats. It's not about might, it's about this. There's a symbiotic relationship there. There's a compassion. And so I said there was a couple elements that needed to be added to Might is Right. And one was compassion and one was cooperation. Species cooperate amongst each other, even if one is food and one is prey. Because there's, most of the animal kingdom is a predator or prey at one moment or the other. You can be a predator and there's always someone bigger than you, is all I'm saying. And so I felt that should have been added into the text somehow. And he did an interview with me, and then later on I read he was taking that and running with it as a satanic temple. He's like, yes, this needs to be added to Might is Right. And I was like, Dick, give credit. Dick, give credit. And the same with when I said, like, oh, lavey, they talked about, what is the Church of Satan? I said, well, it's an artistic and political movement. Well, where does that phrase come from? It's easy to say I came up with the phrase, but if I were to debate Doug, I would say, where does that phrase come from? Well, it comes from, he wouldn't understand that because he doesn't have the equation, right? But it comes from the idea that you look at the moment in history that lavey created that stuff. The Black Panthers were happening. The yippies were happening. So it was a big theater of the absurd. And TV was attracted to this stuff. So it was like, let's be as absurd as we can on this world stage and get attention for our politics. Let's be artists. These artists spoke out. So you had Scientology was birthed then. You had Forrest Ackerman birthing of the sci-fi. He created the word sci-fi then. You had all these artists that would hang out together, and they're like, how can we push our shit forward? Black Panthers walking down the street with guns. It was all the same theatrical politics or artistic and political movements. And so that's where that comes from, is that just that history. It's just understanding the underground. I come from the pure underground. I come from like White Panthers, which were an offshoot of the Black Panthers, raised me up. I was raised up by yippies. I got to hang out with some of the, like Jay Lynch, the guy, these are all underground cartoonists. R. Crumb is a friend of mine. John Sinclair. These are all people, if you run their names, you'll understand where my mentors are from. I have a pretty intense CV as far as underground radical artwork goes.
Do you think that there's any evidence of your fingerprints besides the results, besides the aesthetics, besides the marketing? Do you think that TST has fully erased your name from their history?
Well, I think a historian would be able to deal with that stuff. I have to have a belief that history would have my back to be able to find. Like I said, there's an atheistic show where I stated this concept of it being a political and artistic movement. I know a lot of people think that, well, that's probably been said a million times before, but it hadn't. And I was the first person to state that within the context of what the Church of Satan was. And so I think anyone that's doing a complete history, at least for my generation, you were able to do that. People took their time and they researched things to get the historians research to a painful extent to get the truth. And so I would hope that if this is a big deal, like you say, it's a young religion or a young philosophy, that people would research it and tell that truth would come forward. I've recorded enough. I mean, we've recorded enough. There's a history that tracks this stuff, like the 24-hour Might Is Right radio show that people, I guess, send around and became viral in that group. So there is a history, and I've documented well as best I can. And like right now, I'm pointing people to this atheist podcast from like 10 years ago. So you hope that history has your back. I mean, I don't know what else I can do, but yes, they're trying to write me out of their history in a public, above ground way. And it just, I think, makes them look bad, makes them look like there's something to hide. It ultimately just serves me, because I used to do a thing called Michael Hunt Publishing, and I went by the tag name Mike Hunt. And I did that. I don't know why. It was, I can't even tell you my intent then, but I do know it caught fire, and people wanted to know who this person was. And I would be written to here and time and again, can we do an interview with you? And I would only do it through the mail. And then at one time, the Chicago Reader wanted to do an interview, and I told him I'd let him see me for the real person. I got the cover of the Reader, the Chicago Reader. That's a pretty big deal. And so you get a lot more attention by playing the hidden, mystical person. That's what Kevin's trying to do now. He's riffing off of the Michael Hunt stuff I did. He's riffing off of that by being this whatever fake name and blurring out his face. The more you blur out the face, the more you want to see who this person is. You want to expose them. And he knows that. He knows that. The more interest there is when you put that bag over your head, not less. So it's just like a psychology thing. So the more they try to hide me, the more interest there will be in me, I think. But who knows? I don't really care, though. I'm too busy moving forward. I talk about this stuff now because I'm worried about the precedent it sets. Like I said, you could start to gather people under the Baphomet star, the pentagram, to do unsavory things that aren't of a libertine nature, that aren't of the individual black flame that burns inside the real Satanists.
I think that moving by example and moving forward is taking definitely the high road. And I feel incredibly privileged to get this opportunity to interview you, but also get to know you. And I feel very privileged that I'm able to reveal this here on this podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I feel honored, and I'm just, it's great to work with such a great artist as yourself. I'm honored as well, and this is not a circle jerk. I'm pretty excited to have the opportunity myself, because it was something that was really troubling me. And as you heard in other podcasts where I was trying to get it out there, I probably needed some help with that. And so it's nice to put this out in some sort of context that people would actually hear. Because it is an important, LaVey was a cool guy, and it's a cool philosophy to ponder, as philosophies are meant to do. I don't know. It's saved so many people that I know. So many people will say, "Oh, that book saved my life. That philosophy saved my life." And there are always people, so many people down out living in their car, looking for some empowerment, being picked on, and so I feel the same way. And it is hard for me to look back. Someone within that movement goes, "Why don't you sue? Why aren't you suing these people?" And I just never think of standing still to sue someone. I'm so busy trying to figure out what I'm going to do next.
If you're suing, you're stuck in the past, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so this is something that I'm able to pull a thorn out of my lion's paw. I'm able to pull a thorn out of my lion's paw and get moving back, not be so bothered by what happens anymore. At least I tried to tell you. we shouldn't be joining together under the satanic star to go do anything.
No. We should be our own lions. We should be noble in our own way. And we should carry the crown on our head as our own artist, not under someone else's pride.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for listening to Speak of the Devil podcast. If you have any questions or comments or hate mail, you can always contact us at
speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com.
For more information about Shane, you can go to shaneisthedevil.com or visit him on Twitter at ShaneBugB, all one word. Thank you so much.
That's me.
And I'll see you next week.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're thanking everyone else, are you?
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and tune into our next episode wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. You can find us at Speak of the Devil Pod on Twitter and contact us at speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com. For Shane's artwork or to support his endeavors, please visit shanebugby.com or find him on Twitter at ShaneBugby. I've been